Each year, we tend to receive titles that try to do something a bit different in the gaming space, whether it is something completely new or an interesting combination between genres. In 2018, we saw the release of Vampire. This was an interesting title that had some fun combat with even more interesting vampire mechanics. In many cases, you could kill NPCs within the game, and this would give you a large amount of experience early on. But you could also kill off potential side quest options, along with certain districts closing off to you. The game had its share of flaws, with underdeveloped story elements among other things, but overall, Vampire ended up being a unique RPG that succeeded at trying to do something different. The same thing can be said with 2019's The Sinking City. This was an open world investigation game with a lot of Lovecraft influences. It really put the player into the shoes of an investigator by having you search through old documents and archives to find your next lead, along with talking with witnesses and piecing together crime scenes. The investigation elements were captivating, but like Vampire, The Sinking City had its fair share of flaws like weak combat. I felt like I was in for a similar experience with this year's Disintegration. I like the idea of combining first-person shooting with a strategy element, but it didn't take long for Disintegration to show how the game needed more time to iron out many of its aspects of its flaws and frustrating experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review for Disintegration. Disintegration combines first-person shooting gameplay with strategic elements.
Correct. You are approaching a small pocket of iron ground debris.
Disintegration's gameplay is a combination of first-person shooting and troop control. You are in control of a grav cycle. This cycle allows you to float above the battlefield, and you can opt to stay up really high away from the action or get in close. You can scan the environment to find useful resources along with briefly highlighting each of the enemies on the field. You also have access to a boost that can help you get out of tough situations. The grav cycle is armed with both primary and secondary weapons. Whether you are flying or shooting, it doesn't feel like you are in complete control. The movement can feel a bit clunky, and during some of the more chaotic encounters, or others that require you to be close to the ground, you can feel like you don't have any breathing room, and you might find yourself getting hung up on the level itself. The shooting is serviceable, but it could be better. I never felt like the sensitivity was right when I was playing on the Xbox. It was a situation of feeling like I was fighting the game to aim properly. The best aspect of the game is when the serviceable shooting is paired with the fun troop management.
Fortifications, I'd say we're heading in the right direction.
Will do. Finish them off.
Yeah, sure.
Got it.
Going for the kill!
Will do.
What the? That just about scared me out of my armor. Brace yourselves.
In each of the levels, you will have a group of units that you will control. You can order them to go to a specific location, fall back, or attack a specific target. Each of the units come with their own unique ability that you can use as well. Some can launch mortar fire, throw grenades, or even slow down enemies. You cannot control the units individually, only as a group. The OK shooting paired with the troop control made a lot of the combat encounters very fun. There's a lot of micromanaging going on as you need to babysit your group. This game is anything but boring, but you will be doing a lot of of different things while in the encounters. If a unit falls in battle, you need to quickly get over to them before you fail the mission. Thankfully, you only need to fly over them to pick them up, and then they will come back to the battle. The scan mode comes in handy before you engage the enemies. This lets you get a read on the battlefield and the enemy's positions. Along with this, you need to keep an eye on the ground for cover spots so that your units are not left out in the open. Another neat aspect of the game is some of the destruction that you see in the environments. You can shoot up most of the cover that's seen on the battlefield, and in some cases you can use your troops in tandem with your own shooting. So if there's a bunch of enemies and they're hiding behind cover, you can send your troops in to focus on them, but you could use your own guns to then take out the cover, so you're sort of working together with your AI teammates. As you defeat enemies, you will earn scrap, which also allows you to level up, and you will find these chips that you can use to better your stats of yourself and your troops. When everything was mostly working right, the combat encounters were intense and rewarding, but the game has many flaws and frustrations that continually pop up to hinder the experience. I had many issues with the story. Right away, there was some odd animations and stiff-looking things that made some of the moments, even in the first cutscenes, feel off. But the big thing that sucked a lot of the life out of the cutscenes was the lack of the characters being able to emote. Many of the characters are robots that have flat faces, so when they are talking, it's like hearing a wall talking to you. There's a lack of expression. If the characters had a mouth or more human facial features, this would have helped. Or if they want to keep these robot designs, then their eyes need to be more expressive. But the eyes are rather dead. The game does not do a good job of setting up the main conflict or the world. You are thrown into the game, but you don't have much context, and with the lack of visual emotion from the characters, I didn't find myself interested in the story or the cutscenes. I did appreciate the effort to have a lighter tone in parts, but the humor mostly falls flat. Outside of the story, I had many other issues. In between missions, there's a hub-like area where you can walk around and talk to some of your allies. This area does not feel finished. There's a lot of open space that just eats up time as you slowly walk to each person. The frame rate is inconsistent here, and oddly enough, there's no music playing. It feels really dead. There's a lack of customization present within the campaign. The leveling is a set path with very little personalization, and each of the levels gives you your loadout and which units you are taking with you. It would have been great to choose which units you are taking with you to come up with your own strategies. Plus, this would have only enhanced the replay value. I played the game on normal, and there were some odd difficulty spikes that would occur. Generally, the fights were good on normal, but the shifts with the spikes created some frustration. Along with this, the game has an inconsistent checkpoint system, so there are many times where you need to complete several fights in a row before you get to a checkpoint. So if you die, you might need to repeat some of those same fights again. I wish the game would checkpoint after each of the fights to cut down on that frustration. There doesn't seem to be a sweet spot for the difficulty either. If you play on the easier settings, you won't need to focus on your troops as much, which takes a lot of the fun out of the game. This is because you will be shooting more, and that is not the strong area of this game. Even on normal, your grav cycle feels like it's made of paper. And then there are these instant kill mines that will take you out or kill one of your troops that will blindly walk into it. On top of all of this, I had frame rate issues on the Xbox One, and the game has some really long load times. As I said before, controlling the grav cycle feels floaty and off, and the aiming feels imprecise. In both situations, I felt like I was fighting the controls while I was playing. I also wish that the game allowed you to individually select one of your units, but the game only gives you the options to control the entire group outside of using their abilities. More options would have been better and to enhance the strategy elements present within the game. Another odd issue, or maybe I missed something that was being stated in the training, but in the training mission there's a section where you need to kill all of the enemies with your guns. The problem is every time I shot them, none of them would die, and so I couldn't get past the training sequence. And I'll admit, maybe I missed something, but here it seems like this training sequence is glitched. When the issues were not popping up, I was having a good time with the combat. The problem is you are hit with many frustrations on a consistent basis. But I would like to end this section on a bit of a positive note, and I really like the rather awesome main theme of the game. Here's an example of some of the tracks from the game. Disintegration is a game with a really good idea that needs more stuff ironed out. When the issues are not popping up, I was enjoying the combat. The shooting could be better, but when paired with the troop management, there's a really fun flow here when everything is working right. I enjoyed controlling my units to use their abilities to take out the opposition, but sadly, as you kept playing the game, you only run into more issues. The poor checkpoint system is definitely an area that will frustrate players, and while I appreciated their efforts to create this new story with an interesting story concept, the execution of the cutscenes hurt the story. The character models do look cool, but when most of the characters have faces with flat surfaces or lacking in human features, there's this lack of emotion to them. This could have been remedied if the eyes were more expressive, but they are mostly dead and lifeless. Along with this, the story throws you into the game and doesn't really give you the context you need to understand the situation at hand. It feels rushed and underdeveloped. Disintegration is a game I cannot recommend. It does have some interesting ideas, but there are far too many issues for me to confidently recommend this. I would recommend that you skip this title, or if you are very interested in it, check this one out on a very deep sale.